right. And so, quick reminder again for those attending about the Fall Technical Conference. We're an annual conference sponsored by the American Society for Quality and the American Statistical Association. Our goal is to engage researchers and practitioners in dialogue to lead to more effective use of statistics to improve quality and foster innovation. So you can visit our website there, falltechnicalconference.org. And again, we're hosting this webinar series because we had to cancel this year's conference, but the fun must go on. But we want you to save the date for next year. In October in 2021, we'll be in Park City where we were going to be this year. So the theme still remains. So mark your calendars. Also, the call for papers is out. There's plenty of time till the deadline of March 31st. Here is the program committee, and these are the topics that our sessions will be on. And if you are a presenter for a talk, you'll receive a 50% discount on registration. So that's a good bonus. So be sure to go to our website, falltechnicalconference.org, to submit an abstract. You can either go to this link. There's also a link directly from the homepage as well to submit your abstract. Again, this is week 2. So last week we heard from Dr. Bob Gramercy from Virginia Tech, the recipient of the Uden Award. So this week we'll be hearing from Christine Anderson-Cook and Lulu, who their paper won the Bizguard Award. Next week we'll be hearing from Nathaniel Stevens, who along with Christine Anderson-Cook won the Nelson Award. So be sure to tune in next week for that as well. All right, so the Bizguard Award is awarded annually to an article published in the Quality Engineering Journal in the previous year, and it's awarded for the greatest potential for advancing the practice of quality improvement in light of Dr. Biscard's work. The winning article is made available then for open access at this website, asq.org, Publications for Quality Engineering. We'd like to give thanks to the award committee chaired this year by Stefan Steiner, along with William Brenneman and Marcus Perry. And the recipient of the paper for this year was this one by Christine Anderson-Cook, Lulu, and Peter Parker on effective interdisciplinary collaboration between statisticians and other subject matter experts, appearing in issue 1 of volume 31 last year. So congratulations to Christine, Lou, and Peter for their amazing work. And today they'll be presenting, at least Christine and Lulu will, on the paper. So I'll give a brief introduction to Christine, who is a statistician out at Los Alamos. And prior to that, she worked as a faculty member at Virginia Tech. She's won a couple other awards as well. She is a fellow of the ASQ and the ASA. She is a recipient of the Schul Award, the Schuhart, ASQ Schuhart Medal, the William G. Hunter Award, another award given out at FTC. And as we saw earlier, in addition to the Bizguard Award this year, she also received the Nelson Award. So she's been a great pioneer and beacon in the statistics community, and we look forward to hearing from her. So at this point, I will pass it on to Christine.
Great, thank you, Caleb, for the wonderful introduction. And let me share my screen here. And it's certainly a wonderful honor to be able to present today. So Lou is on the call, but unfortunately Pete was not able to join us. But we're very happy to present this work. As you can imagine, this is sort of a non-technical talk, but focusing on some characteristics that are really important for statisticians to master and become good at. I'd also like to thank Murat Testig, who was the editor of Quality Engineering when we submitted this paper, and he encouraged us to turn it into a discussion paper, and I really think that helped enrich the discussions that we were having around the paper and the material. So first, I'd like to just spend a few moments talking about Soren. And in 2011 was when the ASQ Statistics Division established the Soren Biscard Award. And that was just 2 years after he died. And so in 2009, the applied statistics and engineering, statistical engineering communities really lost a giant. And so I've listed some of his many accolades, but I was fortunate enough to meet Soren a few times and hear him talk. And sort of the two things that I think about when I think about him are, number one, his ability to communicate. He was just really able to say things, and it was like, yeah, that's what I was thinking, but I couldn't express it that way. And so he had a wonderful gift for just communicating very clearly. And then the other thing is, I think he really dedicated his career to working on sort of high impact problems. And so I think both of those themes are things that we'll touch on today, and I think can be a source of really us all elevating our ability to have an impact as statisticians. So thank you, Soren, for all that you did throughout your career. So here is our outline for today, and it really mimics a lot of what we talked about in the paper. So I'll talk first about a flawed collaboration, and so this came early in my career at Los Alamos, where just essentially a lot of things went wrong, and it made our collaboration much more stressful and also much less effective. And so I think sort of seeing where things can go badly sometimes can inspire those lessons learned that really get us to think about being more effective in our collaboration efforts. Then I'll talk more generally about the impacts and benefits that we can get from honing our collaborative skills. And the 6 fundamentals of effective collaboration are really the heart of the paper and the discussion today. And so we'll talk about what those entail, and then also a little bit about how we as statisticians can work at improving those fundamentals to make ourselves more effective when we get into those interdisciplinary teams. And then after the conclusions, we'd like to invite you, the participants, to share some of your insights as well. So we're hoping to reserve a little bit of time at the end. So if you have questions, or if you have some good advice that you've received that you'd like to share, we'd like there to be an opportunity for that. Across the bottom, you'll see all of the discussants that were part of this paper package. And so throughout the slides, when there's some green text at the bottom, those will be attributed to some of the discussants. And as well as Jensen highlighted, when we have a discussion paper, it really is a form of collaboration, and it's enriched by just having those different perspectives packaged in with the original paper. So thanks to them, and you'll see that we highlight some of the wonderful contributions that they made as well. All right, so first, the ineffective collaboration example. So this, as I said, was back from 2005, shortly after I had arrived at Los Alamos National Laboratory. And so we had developed at LANL in the statistics group a new reliability method that enabled us to get uncertainty quantification for the reliability estimate. So we were able to put those reliability bands or uncertainty bands around our reliability using a Bayesian approach. And so we talked at a few conferences about it, and a program manager in the Navy saw this and said, I want you to collaborate with some folks in the Navy on this. And so this was our team that we're going to look at the reliability of a complex system, in this case, a Navy missile system. And the team at the Navy comprised a system engineer, a reliability engineer, and a statistician. And on the LANL side, there was 2 statisticians and an ethnographer. And so some of you may not have heard of ethnographers in this context, but essentially our new method used subsystem and component level data to complement the full system test. So usually they were doing a reliability estimate just using the full system, but that was really expensive because to get that full system test, you had to destructively test a very expensive missile. And so our idea was that we would get a reliability estimate for each of the subsystems and components, and then by combining them with a Bayesian approach, we could get an improved reliability estimate for the overall system. And so the program manager at the Navy said, okay, you guys should work together. But I think the Navy sub-team was a little bit reluctant. They had been doing reliability the same way for quite a long time. They were all senior engineers and scientists. And suddenly these young up-and-coming folks from LANL were showing up, and it's the first, and I'm proud to say the last time, that I led with, we've got, you know, the great solution for your problem, even before we really understood what their problem was in terms of the reliability estimation and the system that we are looking at. So we came in and sort of had the solution before we had really explored what the problem was and what we actually needed to understand about the system. So as we learned later, that the Navy team was a little concerned about how this would disrupt their careers and their sort of daily routine, that suddenly they were supposed to be using a new method that was much more complicated, and they didn't fully understand all of the details of that. And so that, I think, was quite threatening, and I know I certainly did not have enough appreciation for how threatening that could be for them. As we proceeded, when little glitches occurred and there was misunderstandings, the Navy folks their first response would be to contact their program manager, which is the person who controls the funds, and say, this isn't working, we should really just bail out on this. That would lead to a phone call to my program manager, who would then call me and say, you know, what's going on? What's this big problem that we have? So this tendency to escalate things and to not communicate within the team was a great hindrance to making progress. So ultimately, after 2 years, we were able to implement a reliability solution that worked and was very helpful. But you can sense that there was lots of tension, and we certainly weren't very efficient about reaching our goals. All right, so let's itemize a few things that went poorly. So there was a real reluctance to change. So this was a mandated change as opposed to one that the Navy sub-team embraced as an opportunity. And so that really led to a lack of commitment to our project goals and potential solutions. That lack of common goals in part stemmed from some sloppiness on our part. We talked about improved reliability estimates. And what we thought about was that entailed incorporating additional data. So we were going to use more information with the thought that that probably would improve or reduce the width of the confidence intervals or uncertainty intervals. And so the Navy team interpreted improved reliability strictly as whether those uncertainty bounds were getting narrower. And so when in the early stages they didn't get narrower, that was a reason to just walk away from the collaboration. I think there was a lack of understanding on both sides. So certainly on the LANL side, we did not invest enough in really understanding the idiosyncrasies of their system and what data were available. And on their side, it was a new statistical method that they needed to get the hang of. And we really didn't have the computer support and programs to help implement this in a streamlined way. And so that lack of understanding translated into lack of trust from both sides. We also had this weird mechanism for communicating, which certainly did not fit into the category of sensible ground rules. And the individual agendas, in the case of the Navy folks, the fear of change and losing control of their own program, really sort of kept us from being aligned towards executing well on the team. So not a collaboration that you would want to repeat, but it was sort of a good wake-up call for all of us in terms of, you know, how can we get better at this? And so some of the lessons learned that I think we would take away from that collaboration is that we would start very differently. So early in the process, I think statisticians, the LANL group, we should have worked much harder to really understand the status quo of what they were doing, and then see if our method was in fact going to be an enhancement and improvement, instead of leading with, you know, we've got this great tool, let's use it, before we really understood the scope of the problem we were trying to solve. I think it would also have helped if we had had some communication that helped us understand about how people's careers would be impacted, and that would have helped get us aligned and also build some trust. The problem with our improved reliability estimate phrase that we seem to keep using was that we really didn't define quantitatively what that was going to look like. And it was using additional data was the primary ingredient that would help us understand the different pieces of information that we had. And we needed, on both sides, really to invest more in common knowledge. And I've mentioned the ground rules for communication would really have helped us just sort of keep the discussions internal to the team and not broadcasting some of the setbacks that we were having. Throughout the process, we should have been much more proactive, so not been passive when little things were developed and just sort of tackle them right away and keep the lines of communication open. And then we should have had some team self-assessment strategies throughout the project. So a negative experience that was quite stressful at the time, but I think a lot of things that I learned during that collaboration really helped shape my desire to improve those skills and next time I was leading a project to do better at it. More generally, talking about the motivation for being a good collaborator, the notion of cognitive diversity, that may not be a phrase that some of you have heard before, but essentially that's something that's very prominent in the team building and leadership literature right now. And it's been documented to improve creativity, to encourage innovative breakthroughs, and really improve the quality of solutions. And the idea there is that we're leveraging diverse expertise and we're bringing that to accelerate and improve our problem-solving process. And so I think where statisticians fit into this is that we have the opportunity to utilize our data-driven or data-centric perspectives to help bridge the gap between these different disciplines which come in with different priorities and different emphases. And so if we can be the facilitator on some of these interdisciplinary teams, then I think there's a real opportunity there. And so I think I will sort of pause here and just say that the role of statisticians is often a little bit different than some of the other subject matter experts on these interdisciplinary teams. So I'll say it's very rare that we're the owners of the problem. Often that belongs to a stakeholder or someone from a different discipline, but we're involved in identifying solutions, assessing those solutions, and then helping to implement them. And so that particular role, I think, offers one that we can help bridge that gap between different disciplines. And I think we have a chance for greater impact if we're playing a leadership or facilitating role on these teams, and we need good skills to be able to pull that off. So where do we get some advantages from being on these interdisciplinary teams? And we've broken it into a couple of categories. So first, for individual statisticians, I think we have the ability to improve our job satisfaction because we're having more impact. When I transitioned from being a professor at Virginia Tech to coming to Los Alamos, that was actually the biggest incentive, was that I would have a bigger fraction of my day to spend working on collaborative projects on really exciting high impact problems. And so I think that has led to just having a really fulfilling career because it feels like you're making a difference. For the interdisciplinary teams themselves, I think statisticians bring this better statistical thinking. And so what we mean by that is understanding the role of variability and uncertainty and incorporating that into our problem solving and decision making. There's also a new discipline that was proposed by Roger Hurl and Ron Snee called statistical engineering, but it's something that many of us have been doing for our careers. And that's the idea of integrating multiple statistical tools and methods and bringing them into the problem-solving process to make ourselves more efficient. And so that structured, data-driven, data-centric problem-solving and decision-making is really a key ingredient of what we bring to the process. For organizations, I think we help improve productivity and lead to better solutions. And so that actually is a huge plus. If a team can function well, then we can get to better solutions more quickly. And then lastly, for the discipline of statistics, I think if when we work on high impact problems, we can really elevate the perception of our discipline. And I think that's something that really helps us that when people hear, oh, a statistician is on the team, we want them to have a positive association with that. Okay, so now to the meat of the talk, the fundamentals of effective collaboration. So we identified 6 different fundamentals. And again, this is drawing from our own experience and then also from the literature and other disciplines. And so we'll talk about each of these 6 different fundamentals and how together they can help elevate the performance of the team. So the first fundamental is respect. And so I think this is, it connects back to cognitive diversity again, where we really have to embrace different backgrounds and perspectives and have an appreciation for what each discipline and each person brings as a contribution to a good solution. So we want to avoid ranking the importance of different expertise and really understand that we have strengths and weaknesses that we each bring to the process. So for statisticians, I think the strengths that we bring are sort of an appreciation for data and uncertainty and its role in sort of calibrating how confident we should be in our decisions. But the weaknesses that we often bring is that our fundamental background of the problem space may just not be as well developed as other team members. And so I think we want to think about emphasizing our strengths and then also helping to sort of mitigate the weaknesses of everyone on the team by helping them build their knowledge base to contribute fully. Having respect helps build a safe environment for discussion. So if we can have unfiltered and healthy conflict around ideas, like really challenge each other about, are we solving the right problem and are we solving it in the right way, that actually leads to much better solutions. But that has to be in the context of some really solid respect so that people feel not threatened by the process, but that it's an opportunity to really understand the problem space. And I think statisticians really have a nice role to play in terms of asking questions to build a common information space that all of the team members can share, and that's going to help our decision-making process. So here's the first of the green comments on the slide. So Michael Latano mentioned that there's a distinction between respect for individuals, so that's interacting with each person in a respectful way, and respect for their disciplines. And I think both are key ingredients for a successful collaboration. The second fundamental is having shared common goals. And if you think about the Navy example that I talked about early on, it was clear that we never aligned and had a shared set of common goals. We were always sort of tugging in different directions, and that makes it really hard to make progress. So as the illustration on the left-hand side shows, we often start off with our own agendas and our own thoughts about how a solution should evolve. And if we have good, clear, shared common goals, that can help us be well aligned and sort of get to a common destination much more effectively. So I've itemized a few things here that are helpful for our goals to be. So they need to be specific, objective, and quantifiable. So we know what we're trying to do, and we can have a measurable assessment of whether we achieve those goals. We want to clearly articulate them. So this was a fundamental problem we had in the reliability scenario, where we used a phrase and never clearly defined what it was. And so everyone in their own heads was interpreting our progress towards that goal differently. We have to agree upon them, and we want them to be challenging and motivating. That sort of keeps us working on some of those really high impact problems that we want to be. And then throughout the process, we want to revisit those and fine tune them just to make sure that we keep heading towards an optimal solution for those goals. The third fundamental is trust, and Lencioni has a pyramid that talks about high functioning teams, and the foundation for that is that we have a well-established trust. Once we have that, then we can handle that productive conflict that allows us to challenge ideas and really think through, are we coming up with the best solution? It helps us achieve commitment. So if we trust each other, then we want to be on this team and moving forward. And it allows us an easy way to sort of have accountability. that if things are lagging, we can get to the root of the problem and get reestablished, and then ultimately that culminates with good results. If we have a lack of trust, then it discourages these frank discussions. I've certainly been on some teams that don't have a good trusting setup, and so you tiptoe around the edges of what needs to be said instead of just being able to say it and be direct about it. And it can also create boundaries within our teams. If we have those high levels of trust, then it encourages unhindered open discussion where we can ask questions and get feedback very easily, and it also really helps with buy-in. So I'm very passionate about the trust aspect of things, and so I'll highlight a book that for me was really transformative, The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. And if you're interested in learning more about this, I would strongly encourage reading this book. I think we often think about trust as just a nice concept, but it really has enormous implications about just how efficiently we move through life. If we're in trusting relationships on a team or with our friends or with our colleagues, it just means we spend a lot less energy checking up on each other, that we just know that the job will get done correctly. And so I think this is a key ingredient, not only to sort of feel good about our collaborations, but also to make them much more efficient. A couple of comments from the discussants. So I think early on in the process, it's enormously helpful to have face-to-face interactions and to spend time together. Obviously, in a COVID world, that becomes much more difficult. But in a more normal setting, if we can actually spend time face-to-face with people, it really helps accelerate the building of trust. Ellie Typhina and Allison Wilson comment that when expectations differ early in the process, having the team members find solutions and build that common set of goals to build on actually can be an excellent trust-building exercise. And then Willis Jensen comments that there is a distinction between respect and trust, and that's certainly very true, but they're highly interconnected. And so we want both respect for the person and their discipline, but we also want to feel that we can trust them. And if we have just one but not the other, that can be a liability for our team. The fourth fundamental is commitment. And so we have good team rapport with trust and respect. We have a common set of goals, but we need to have commitment to achieving the results that we need and moving forward. And so I think we want to be able to hold team members accountable to each other, and this will help avoid delays and sort of really accelerate the progress that we're able to make. A couple of specifics for statisticians. I think as part of the commitment, it's really helpful to ensure that statistical thinking is integrated throughout the decision-making and problem-solving. We want to make sure that statistical tools are properly used and that we're realistic in our assessment of what decisions we're making based on appropriate quantification of uncertainty. So that's all going to help us just sort of keep the process moving along and everyone committed to it. The fifth fundamental is intercommunication, and so this really gets us the benefit of a comfortable, friendly environment for discussing things. It reduces our chances of misunderstanding and conflict and can really enhance our efficiency and productivity. I think for statisticians who are generally not the owners of a problem, but are trying to work on the solution and assessing those solutions, there's two aspects to focus on. So one, the listening piece, and second, the communicating or talking piece. So for listening, I think it's important that we ask lots of questions and that we're listening effectively and actively, where we're always thinking about how things connect to what we need for the decision or the problem solving. On the speaking end of things, I think it's very important to limit the use of jargon and also explain concepts without sort of having unspoken assumptions. Those can get us into trouble. And so being able to articulate the assumptions that go into a statistical method is very helpful for being able to assess if it's appropriate for a particular scenario. Some good comments from the discussants. It's important to focus both on what and how to communicate for different audiences. And so having both of those features on our radar is very helpful. And I think for a long time, we've known that the statisticians have this role of asking naive questions. And I think if we view it not only as building up our own expertise, but also building common understanding about the basics and the assumptions of what we're doing, that can really help to match the proposed solution to the actual problem. So in other words, us asking a naive question really opens the door for discussion about the basics and the assumptions, and are we starting at the right point? It has the added benefit that showing vulnerability of asking these simple questions really allows others to step in easily and say, well, I don't really understand, what's going on with the statistical piece or other parts of it. And so we're building on that trust relationship where it's a safe place to admit that you don't understand the component of the discussion. And then lastly, Stephanie DeHart and Kevin White and Michael Latano highlight that ineffective communication can directly translate into damaging the trust relationship that's so essential for our teams. And then the last one, we know what we're trying to do with our goals. We have a good team environment. We're committed to it. But unless we're able to execute, we're not going to be able to get to that best available solution. And so we all need to be committed to making sure that we actually get the right solution in place. A couple of things that are particular for statisticians. I think it's very important that we focus on the relevance and the quality of the data that are collected. And so a lot of times that translates into an assessment of the measurement system and making sure that that's adequate for our purposes. We need to make sure that the statistical methods and analyses are appropriately implemented. And we have to stay connected throughout the whole process to make sure that the implementation actually translates into what we need. So as part of my role on many teams, I'm a design of experiments person, and so I'm designing the experiment. And it's extremely rare that the original proposal of that experiment is what actually gets implemented. There's always complications or new features that get introduced. And so it's important that we can adapt to those changing elements to make sure that our solution continues to be as relevant and on purpose as possible. All right, so those are the 6 fundamentals. The next portion of this is really to think about how statisticians can hone those fundamentals to be more effective. And I think one natural question is, are we born with those skills? Or are they something that we can develop? And I think the answer is both. If Pete Parker were here, he would be quick to point out that we all start at different points on our journey to improve our collaboration skills, but we all have the opportunity to become more effective. And so I think that's sort of a very helpful reminder that wherever we are on our journey to being effective collaborators, we can always improve and enhance those skills and play a more effective role. So let's talk about some of the things that we can do on our journey to improve our collaboration skills. So the first one is really a mindset, and that's to embrace cognitive diversity. And I think we can practice actively listening to diverse views and just have an openness to people seeing the same situation in different ways, and to have an appreciation that that enriched conversation really helps all of us. And it helps us to soften disagreements and also to have a fairer assessment of trade-offs. The second bullet is one that have become very much aware of in the last few years, and that's the difference between objective and subjective. So if we're looking at a table of data, and someone says this value is larger than that value, there's a right and a wrong answer to that. But if we're looking at the same table and someone says, well, I think we should emphasize the quality aspect more than cost savings, that's a preference, and there's no right or wrong answer to that one. That's just a matter of how we're valuing the trade-offs that are part of every decision-making and problem-solving effort. And so I think we need to be aware of the distinction between those two. And then we need to just value different interpretations and have some structure, often in the form of visualization tools, that really help us see what difference our trade-off assessments make in terms of where we're going to be pointed. So if I value cost savings more and you value quality more, can we see what difference that makes in terms of the choices that we're going to prioritize? Then when we've reached some consensus, I think there's different ways of presenting the same information, and so we want to choose the right strategy when we deliver our intended messages outside of the team to our stakeholders and other people that will learn of the decision. A couple of points from the discussants. So Willis Jensen says that if we just try to promote diversity in and of itself, we'll probably fail. But if we can emphasize to our bosses and to our team members how it helps us achieve better solutions, then it's really hard not to embrace that as a solution that we want. And then Roger Hurl mentioned something, an opportunity for practicing our appreciation for cognitive diversity, and that's within our own profession. A lot of times when we talk about the merits of different methods, it becomes quite contentious, and we're just trying to get our tool or our method to win. But I think it's really helpful if we have a more balanced discussion about different merits for different approaches and them being appropriate for different scenarios. And so I think that discussion is a really helpful way for us to practice those skills and also to be nicer to our fellow statisticians in terms of honoring different perspectives. The second thing that we can do to help prepare is to become better communicators and to share well. And so I think just being aware of technical jargon and being sensitive to different connotations of keywords. So if you say design or model or parameters to an engineer, they often have different associations than to a statistician. And so just being aware of differences of word usage and the connotations associated with some of those keywords can really help us share those technical concepts more effectively. And if we can do it in everyday language, it sort of unpacks the connotation part of things. For students who have worked with me at Los Alamos, they know that I'm a big fan of elevator speeches. So these are sort of 1 or 2 minute nuggets where you're practicing communicating why a concept is important, what the key essence of it is, and what the core assumptions are for that method. If we can practice that in a non-pressure packed situation, we're going to be much better when we get into a team situation where we're called upon to explain a statistical method or interpret some of the results. I think it's important to highlight key differences between approaches. Nothing facilitates a discussion better than saying, here are 2 alternatives. Here are the strengths and weaknesses of each of those different options. Now let's figure out which one is the right solution for our problem that we're trying to solve. And so using graphical and numerical summaries can also help facilitate that discussion and make the decision making more productive. The third characteristic or third way that statisticians can prepare is to tailor a message to match the framework. And so here we're talking about the mission and the culture of our organization and understanding how people function and interact. So we're often, our team is embedded in an organization. And so if we can understand sort of what the priorities are of the organization, it's going to help us to match our message to be consistent with that. I think it's important to explore past solutions, to understand what succeeded and failed, and then to take that knowledge and connect it to our current situation. It's also helpful to anticipate limitations of potential solutions. That's going to help us to not head down the wrong path and end up with a solution that's suboptimal down the road. One suggestion that I thought was very helpful from Michael Latano was before you're in the full team meetings, I think it can often be very helpful to have one-on-one discussions with some of the key members of the team to just see if you're on track, if you've interpreted the problem space effectively, and then also to get some buy-in so that you have someone who can advocate for a solution or a suggestion that you're proposing. The fourth thing that we can do to help prepare is to participate fully. In many cases, I've heard of statisticians saying, well, I only design the data collection or the experiment, or I only do the analysis portion of things. And I think we want to be full participants on a team. And so some strategies for helping with that is that we can build appreciation and core understanding of the domain knowledge. And I would say that this is something that I found to be not only beneficial in the team situation, but also a source of great job satisfaction. Knowing these sort of key elements of different problem scenarios and different disciplines really sort of helps you feel like, you know, you have a broader base of understanding of lots of different scenarios. I think it's important to be an active listener, to incorporate important information in the development of solutions. We can practice with some experienced statisticians, the ability to extract key messages and communicate key messages. Often when we were walking to and from meetings and I had a junior colleague with me, I would say, you know, what was sort of the key thing that so-and-so said that really helped form, you know, part of the solution, or how could we have communicated this part of our solution in an effective way? So just practicing those things in a less threatening environment. I think building curiosity into other subject areas to adopt sort of a posture of being inquisitive really helps us improve understanding and build connection with other experts. And it can be very helpful to have friendships outside of our statistics colleagues because that gives us an informal way of practicing sharing and questioning and just building our understanding in an informal environment. All right, and then lastly, I think many statisticians are a bit shy about leading or facilitating, and so stepping in and being comfortable in that role, I think, can be very advantageous for us. And we have some things that can help us, and one of them is using a formal structured process that has data at its core can really be helpful. So the Six Sigma movement, I think, was enormously made more successful by the suggestion of the DMAIC process. So define, measure, analyze, improve, control, a 5-step problem-solving process where it gives us some structure. People know what aspect of the problem we're focused on, and that there will be opportunities later in the process for some different aspects to be discussed. A few years ago, Lou and I proposed a decision-making structured process called DEMREC, so define, measure, reduce, combine, and select. And so this does what the DMAIC process does for problem solving. It gives us some structure for decision-making. And for those of you who have heard me talk about the decision-making before, you know that we actually practice these skills. The last time we bought a car, we went formally through the DEMREC process to identify and evaluate different cars. And so that's a helpful way to get mastery of these different skills. And then lastly, I think nothing gives you confidence in leading than practicing that. And so I think look for opportunities to lead and manage conflict outside of work, and volunteer organizations like ASA and ASQ are really nice, friendly environments to practice those skills with other like-minded people. Roger Hurrell, I think quite correctly highlighted that a formal process should really be part of those fundamentals of collaboration. And so from here on, we're going to talk about 7 fundamentals instead of 6, where I think the process part really can elevate the performance of our team. And then lastly, just being willing to show all those fundamentals isn't enough. Roger Hurrell highlighted that training and mentoring are key ingredients for us improving those skills. Ben Slade highlighted that proactive development of these skills are particularly important for early career statisticians. And I will say at the point of finishing that reliability collaboration that went poorly, that was a big incentive for me to work on my collaboration skills. And so that is translated into all sorts of unexpected opportunities coming along just because when a person has those skills, they become a sought after person to have on the team. I think we can all continue to hone out those skills throughout our stages of all stages of our career. And so there's benefits not just for those early career statisticians. And then lastly, Michael Latano highlighted that we can, as part of our training, deliberately rehearse some of the key moments in our collaboration teams, just so that we can be more confident when we're actually in those key moments. All right, so finally, in conclusion, from the literature and our experience, we've identified these 7 fundamentals that are key to effective interdisciplinary collaboration. So respect and trust help to build that healthy team environment that set the stage for us to be productive. If we have shared common goals, that guides the team efforts and really motivate our commitment to being successful as a team. Good intercommunication and having a structured process foster smooth functioning of the team. And then if we're all committed to good execution, then we're going to successfully be able to implement that into our team plan. Our hope is that this paper and this presentation give us the opportunity to sort of bridge the gap between what happens in a lot of university training programs for statisticians, which are very methodology and tool-centric, and help connect statisticians to being effective and to embracing, facilitating, and leading in a multidisciplinary team environment to solve important problems. And just a couple of reminders about what the benefits are for us. We can be more impactful at work and in society if we're working on these important problems. And our discipline is elevated with more proven contributions because we're working on these impactful situations. All right, just concluding with the reference again. So if you're going to read the paper, I'd encourage you to look at all of the discussion. A big thanks to all of our discussants because they really enriched the conversation. And then I've talked several times about statistical engineering. And so there is a community of people that are focusing on this and how important it is for statisticians to be effective, called the International Statistical Engineering Association. And I've put the web page there for that. It's free to join. It's an international community with several hundred members. And I think they produce some wonderful content that can really help you get up to speed and sort of think about the engineering part of coming up with good solutions. So I will make a little plug. So on next week, there is going to be an ICEA online summit, and Caleb, who introduced me, is going to be one of the speakers. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about statistical engineering, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for that to happen. So I think we're at the end here of the formal portion. And again, I would encourage you to use either the chat box or post some questions or comments. And it would be nice to hear from some of the audience about their ideas about good collaboration.
So thanks, Christine. That was an excellent talk. And I guess the way we can set this up, if you just have a quick question, you can send that to us via the chat or the question and answer tab. But if you have more of a topic of discussion you'd like, then raise your hand and then I can allow you to speak. So we did already have a question about whether the presentation will be made available, and the answer is yes. So if you go to the Fall Technical Conference website under the FTC Webinar Series tab, after each presentation, we'll be posting the YouTube recording beneath each abstract for the series. So be sure to check that out after we're done here. I'd give it probably about a day or two before they're up.
Caleb, I'll go ahead and chime in with a story if you don't mind.
Sure.
So similar to what Christine was giving as the example for the Navy, that's a lot of what I do in my work of collaborating with outside organizations. So I really feel like I come from the outside. I'm an outsider to a lot of these folks, and trying to get the buy-in can be very challenging because a lot of the projects that we support are relatively unstructured. And so one of the methods that we've found to try to get that trust and respect built in is to try to find a small in with like our working group to get an early success in. And once you start to see a quick success, they start to understand the value that you can have, and then you can start spreading the influence and providing more impact. So when we start new programs or projects, we try to identify where is a spot where we could have a quick win so we can start to build the trust. And that seems to really help with the collaborations going forward.
That's a great idea. And certainly as soon as people have seen in your own problem space some success, then I think it's much easier to just have them embrace it as an opportunity. So yeah, that's a wonderful suggestion. And I think just really helps people start to feel comfortable about, yeah, we're on the right path.
So we have a question here from Maria saying, can we use your fundamentals for other quality meetings and projects? They all make sense and encourage collaboration.
So I think it's in many ways a life strategy to sort of have these whenever we're interacting with people and we're sort of pulling in different directions. You could imagine how the whole political season would change if we in fact had some of these respect and trust fundamentals that we're incorporating into all aspects of life. So I think they're very universal. And I will say that we sort of took liberally from the literature in other disciplines. So these are widely used in a lot of different applications already. So I think lots of opportunities to practice them and to use them to be more effective.
Any other questions, topics of discussion?
So I'll maybe pose a question just to see if there's some reaction to this. So if you think about your own collaborations, are there some aspects that feel particularly challenging? That might be something that would be helpful to talk about. Just, you know, where do things tend to get hung up and not go as smoothly as we'd like them to?
So Richard comments here, the requirement for technical domain knowledge is a big challenge for statisticians. You had any comments on that?
So it certainly is, and I think there's definitely a little bit of an art to understanding when the conversation is going on in the subject matter expertise. Is this something that's really foundational that I need to understand, or okay, they're off in the weeds now and I won't be able to follow that, but they're really talking about, you know, how does uncertainty figure into this, or, you know, how do we determine this? So the ability to extract the essence of the problem, and whether it's a technical detail or whether, you know, it's something that you just need to get the hang of. And certainly having a phone and Googling some of the terminology, to me, feels like it's enormously helpful. That, you know, someone says, oh, we're talking about this. And it's like, I don't even know that word. So just being able to sort of fill in some gaps and do some sort of quiet research to understand what the core of the problem is a really important skill. And I think over the years, I've also gotten more comfortable saying, okay, I really don't know what we're talking about. So how does this fit into the problem? Just to remind people of sort of the different levels that we have. And that has the benefit of when you start talking statistically about things, they'll say, okay, you've lost me here. I don't know what we're talking about. And so that comfort in the team to just say, this isn't my area of expertise, you know, help get me up to speed so that I can participate. I think that's something that's really helpful to establish as the ground rules for a team.
So we had another question here from Maria asking, how would you deal with certain members who may have a different approach and seem stubborn or rather set in their ways?
So I will say we have none of those at Los Alamos, people that are set in their ways with strong opinions. So I think it's Obviously, the personality part of things and sort of the loudest voice carrying the day, it's really helpful to be able to talk about bringing things back to, you know, is this the right approach, or are we focusing on the right part of the problem? And just making sure that we can articulate that it's consistent with those shared common goals that we've established. I think that can sort of keep a strong personality from dominating things, because it's going to foster discussion about, oh, I was interpreting this in a different way. And drawing out some of the quieter people, I think also can help sort of get a better balance between the participants of, you know, oh, Bob, does this resonate with you? Or, you know, does this seem like the right approach? I think just being able to share the conversation and have other people being specifically asked to participate makes it a little harder for the strong personalities to just take over and try to force through what they think the right solution is. A lot of people skills of just sort of trying to induce some balance and to get everyone feeling like they're a full participant and are being heard in the discussion.
We had another question here from Joan saying, you alluded to the age cohort differences in your early unsuccessful example, and that cognitive diversity can include age experience differences. So do you have any suggestions for intergenerational teams so that we can get around this behavior of okay millennials or okay boomer behavior on the team?
Yeah, so I think that I haven't thought specifically about that, but I do think it's easy to get sort of typecast into a particular role based on sort of age or experience. And so again, bringing things back to, you know, how does this fit with our shared common goals? Or you might have some different insights, you know, just because you have a different perspective. But I think it being viewed as an expert and then someone coming in very strongly and saying, I've got the solution, I think that's more threatening to a more senior person who's used to being perceived as the expert. And so just moderating sort of how that conversation is had feels like it's going to sort of take away some of the sort of personal, you know, feeling clenched of like, wow, they don't seem to respect, you know, what I've accomplished in my career. To just say, well, I think about it a different way. So the sort of the softness of presenting an option, I think sometimes can be a bit disarming and just make things go a little more smoothly. But, and I think for the younger folks, they're probably feeling, as a general rule, a bit more insecure. And so if the more senior people can sort of validate their opinions and say, well, you know, let's hear from your perspective, then I think that will help bolster their confidence to participate. So maybe an awareness of where people might feel a bit more vulnerable, and then doing something to try to mitigate that feels like it could be helpful.
So I think we might have time for maybe one or two other questions. We've got about a minute left. So if anybody else has any questions or topics of discussion. Okay, well, I think, I guess we'll call it at that. So thank you again, Christine, for the amazing talk. And to our participants, a reminder that same time next week, we'll be hearing from Nathaniel on his and Christine's other paper. So be sure to tune in there. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you. Yeah, thanks, Caleb and Sarah, for organizing this. I think this is a wonderful series for us to be able to participate in.
Absolutely.